Détruire tout, c'est une obligation. Détruire tout, c'est une obligation. une obligation.
Hello, everybody. How y'all doing today? I am Silentkaster, and we're gonna be doing some, well, I'm gonna start with your questions first, because we didn't get to the questions last week, unfortunately. And so, also, my box was down for a bit, so if y'all had questions, and you got an error message, I was on this free trial and I didn't realize that it had expired, and it did, and of course I didn't renew it I didn't by the time I renewed it, I had already forgotten that, because it doesn't auto renew. So yeah, I'm gonna do the questions. And what's up, Rapix Gaming? What's up, Starlight? How y'all doing? And the last question we left off on was a really interesting one. It was one that I was going in order of the questions, and I didn't get to it because it was right at the end of the show, and I just didn't have enough time, because I have a lot to say about this subject. But let's go ahead and ask this question. Let me get to it. I gotta find it, of course. Wait, why am I not? Oh, here we go. Okay. All right, here's the question. What is your opinion on the effect social media is making on U.S. politics? Has it had an overall positive or negative effect in your opinion? Okay. So first of all, let's talk about the effect itself. And so what social media does, and I want to compare this to, for instance, a very similar phenomenon, which if you look back at like 2008, for instance, there was a kind of a boom, especially with like, even on TV. This probably even predates that a little bit, but, on TV about like, for instance, like, MTV Cribs, where they showed like all these people that were just, these celebrities that were, they lived these like glorious lives, and they had pools inside of pools, and they had, bathrooms inside of bathrooms, and 37 bedrooms, and, like all these other, things that really, and they would profile different celebrities. Like, I think, was it Mary J. Blige that was one of them, or Missy Elliott or something like that? Like, that was such a huge thing back then, of course, right? And so what it kind of did was, back then we had this separation of like celebrities versus like normal people. Because even like on social media, like Facebook and whatnot, like you could maybe like follow a celebrity and kind of see what they were up to, like, or MySpace or whatever, but you couldn't actually like interact with them, right? Like, it was just kind of like they were there. And now we have stuff like Twitter and TikTok and all this stuff where you can just like leave comments and, like kind of interact. And, they post stories and they show you their lives. And, again, like even back then, like you had these like, magazines that were doing like a lot of interviews. And they still do that, but they do that to a lesser degree now because they're not as in demand. Because a lot of times if you want to know what a celebrity is going through or what they think or what they feel like or whatever, all you're going to do is just go and visit the, their social media page, and you're going to be able to see what they're up to, what their schedule is, kind of what they're doing and everything else. Like, and it's not as big of a deal as it was back in, 2008 today. Not to say that, meeting a celebrity may not be a big deal for someone still, but there's certainly less of a degree of separation, right? So, the thing is that in politics, it has done the same thing. And so what social media does is it kind of brings that thing that people never paid attention to back then in front of their faces. So, for instance, like, Trump was probably it was like one of the main drivers of this. Like, how many followers did he have? Like 60 million or something? Maybe more, I'm not sure, on Twitter. And so what he did was like he brought like things to the public eye, and as a result a lot of people that even didn't like him would either hate follow him or essentially do that kind of stuff, or just kind of like interact with people that would interact with him, right? And so of course a lot of like your senators and your House of Representatives and politicians from all over the world started doing the same thing. And they started just going on Twitter and just like posting about, oh, this is so awesome. Oh, like we should make this policy because, it'll improve lives and do all this stuff. Well, of course, in 280 characters, back then I think it was like 140, but in 280 characters, you cannot, think about these bills that are like hundreds of pages long. Thousands in some instances, right? These bills. And you're going to go on Twitter and try to summarize that. Even if you have like a 8-string post, you're going to try to summarize that in maybe 2,000 characters if you get to, 8 strings, right? Well, what is that helping? What is that doing? Is like you are just giving your stance on something. And you're giving a very abbreviated stance of why you might believe in something. And a lot of times these politicians haven't even read the entire text of the bill themselves before they go and vote on it. They just know the highlights of the bill and, kind of what it says. It's kind of like when you read, like, these, like, if for instance, if you go and buy a car or you go and buy a house or whatever, like, if you actually took these contracts and you read every single page of it, well, you're also living life. Like, imagine you go to the bank and you just sit there and they give you like 120-page contract and you just kind of like, okay, I'm going to start reading it. And you just read through it. Like, the bank probably wouldn't even allow that. They'd be like, okay, do you want to do this another day? Like, if you want to read through the whole thing, like, a lot of times that's the thing, right? Is like, there's this degree of separation that used to exist and it no longer exists. And as I said before, I'm not necessarily of the opinion that democracy, in any fashion is one of the best ways to handle politics. A lot of people talk about, we need to protect democracy. Democracy is great. Democracy is this and that. Like, but here's the thing. Democracy is really just a majority of people that, aren't, that think one way, that are dictating policy, right? So in one, when you think about, like, for instance, like, one of the big things in school is like, oh, you shouldn't bully kids in school. Well, if eight kids are popular and 2 are not, guess who's going to get bullied, right? Well, it's kind of the same thing in politics, except that people want to say that their side is right. They believe in their virtue being more virtuous than the other side's. And so it makes this, like, incredible distaste for people. It makes this incredible, what I would say, emotion and passion come to every subject. Because now you can not only interact with your detractors, but you can interact with, everyone, with that's on or not on your side, and just get more ideas and more vitriol as far as the other side goes. And so what social media has done is it has robbed the charitable position of one of the sides, because there's so much vitriol when two sides interact on social media, because there's no element there of humanity, right? Like the fact that you would think that another human is on the other side of the keyboard that just happens to have a different opinion than you, that removes that. So now it's just their side versus your side. And so because of that, there's no compassion for one side. It is just your virtue versus theirs. And so that's one. But B, what it also does is it encourages those through vitriol that may not be voting with a lot of information, that may not, be high information voters. It encourages them to go out and make a change and go to the polls based on whatever, issue that they happen to hear about on Twitter or TikTok or whatever, right? And so this is why I keep saying that the art of playing on social media is ultimately one that belongs, in the garbage. I am of the opinion that if you are a politician, you should not have a Twitter. If people want to contact you, they should email you, write you, call you, whatever, but you should not have a Twitter. You shouldn't have any of these, different platforms that are social media-esque, right? Maybe a YouTube, but that's just to do videos and whatnot, and you have to explain. I know that what I'm saying isn't fully fleshed out, but I really think that politicians shouldn't be allowed to have a Twitter. But going beyond that, the thing is that that's what it's doing. It's encouraging through through passion, not compassion, passion, people to go out and vote a certain way. And so who benefits from that? Well, the thing is that, what we would consider like the American left, for instance, would benefit from that, because they are always going to be like the younger voters that are coming out of college. It sounds really, really appealing to a lot of people. For instance, like, oh, I really want to get that student loan forgiveness, right? Really want to get that student loan forgiveness. I really want to get all of these different elements that are being promised by Democrats and, again, the American left. I really want to get those because they're really appealing. The traditional problem that the Democrats have had is getting those people to go out and vote. Just because they're not paying attention. They have, other things going on in their lives. Well, now it's very easy to do that. You've got the early voting, you've got the mail-in voting, and, the voting on the day of. But not only is it easy to do that, they're now fired up more because of the social media aspect. So do I think it's been a negative or a positive? Well, the answer to that is a negative because, again, I don't want anybody that's a low information voter, to go out and vote. And that includes people on, the right or the left, or, what we would consider the right and left. Because they have no business in voting, based on whatever they heard on Twitter, and yet that is what they're going to do in many cases. It is my opinion that in order to vote, that you should have to take a test that at least says who is your governor, who's your lieutenant governor. If you want to vote in local elections, who is, the different officers and, the local area, what are the basic policy positions that each one holds? Like you should be able to answer that. And if you can't answer that, then, or if you fail that test, then you shouldn't be able to vote. I mean, and the reason for that is just because why should my vote count just as much as somebody who, again, looked at something on Twitter and said, I'm mad at the other side, and went and voted? It shouldn't, at least not in my opinion. And so, again, I'm not one that just says, oh yeah, we need democracy. Because it's, again, like, what are you, you're just saying, like, I want, 51% of the population to choose what should happen, right? I mean, that's ultimately what democracy is. And you might like it, you might not. You better hope you're in that 51%, because if you're not, and another thing is that it encourages politicians to be dishonest, because politicians have to appeal to that 51%, right? And so if you've got someone that's like, hard on one side, for instance, well, then they're gonna have to change their messaging a bit, whether that be soften it up or go hard on something, attack someone they wouldn't normally attack, whatever, to appeal to that 51%. And once they get your vote, well, now it's kind of, what can you do to make sure that they hold to that, right? Like, it's just kind of, you just kind of have to hope that they do. And, okay, well, they might be reelected in 2 or 4 or 6 years, but, it's kind of, once it's done, it's done, And so I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that people should have to rule based on honesty, and this, again, flies back into I don't think that, the government should be hiding secrets from people so that we have all this top secret information that, only senators know, only the House knows, only the president knows, whatever, only the military. But yet, if they know that, then they know to some degree what they are capable and not capable of doing. And you don't know that as the voter. You don't know what you don't know, right? And so they may promise something, but it ends up being an empty promise because they can't fulfill that promise because of that information. So, do I think voting is great? No. Do I think there's probably a better system that could be come up with? Yeah, I do. So, if you ask me, has it had an overall positive or negative effect? Definitely negative, because it encourages low information voting. It fires people up that shouldn't be fired up about certain things. And it removes that degree of separation from your politician where you think that, a well-written email is going to appeal to them, as much as somebody tweeting at them like, I hate you, you suck, I'm going to vote against you, kind of a thing, So, yeah, that would be my answer on that. All right. Hey, welcome, Roto. How you doing? Test should include basic economy and basic law, even if you cut out lots of people. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, there should be certain, if you're going to do it that way, there should be certain criterion that you have to meet in order to vote. It just shouldn't be like, oh, you can just go vote. That kind of a thing. Because what dictates you to, not you, but what dictates anybody to have the power, to change what people can dictate to do to you at gunpoint. And what I mean by that is if the government passes a law, right, and you don't abide by that law, even if you disagree with it, then the government can hold you responsible, and they can fine you, they can jail you, and they can kill you if they absolutely deem you a threat, right? And it's completely legal, and it's even, encouraged under some forms of democracy. So the thing is that, do I agree with that? That people should just be able to vote willy-nilly? No, I don't. Hey, Chewy. That's probably a question I would answer on the next stream, Roto, but let me give you the link for the box if you want to if you want to ask that question. If you submit it here, I will actually, formulate, research it a little bit, and formulate a opinion, but I might forget about it if you don't submit it there. And that's completely anonymous, by the way. You don't have to sign up for anything. You can just type your question there, submit it, and I will get to it, next time. So yeah, completely anonymous. You don't have to sign up. No email, I don't think. I think you can just literally type your question and hit send. Okay. Next question. Opinions on the future of automobiles. Can the U.S. grid handle most cars being electric? Will blackouts be more common? What will the cost be to upgrade the infrastructure to suit these new demands? The prices of the new batteries cost in the region of $4,000 to $20,000. How can low-income families afford to run an electric car? Okay, so first of all, let's talk about, let's take this question. This is a lot of questions. So let's take this question one at a time. Opinions on the future of automobiles. Well, there has been an initiative for a long time to try to effectively kind of corral people into using, for instance, like public transportation. That this has been for a long time, and it's usually in the name of environmentalism. There was even a recent law passed, for instance, in the UK, in a certain region, where you cannot drive, I believe it's at certain times of the day, or you can only drive on certain roads a finite number of times. And if you drive on those roads, outside of those parameters that were set, you will then be either fined, or I guess if you don't pay the fines, then eventually your licenses get revoked, right? So this was recently passed, and I wish I had the story for this because I don't, but it was passed in the name of environmentalism. So what do I think the future of automobiles is? Well, we're starting to already see that, people are trying to get away from like gas-powered automobiles. We're seeing this in California, that certain, automobiles are only going to be able to be produced and sold if they meet, very strict criteria. I think that, it's something they're trying to get, you either have to meet a certain income level in order to effectively own or operate an automobile. And if you don't meet that high income level, then you need to, rely on public transportation, right? And so if you had to ask my opinion, that's what I think that they would want. Can U.S. grid handle most cars being electric? Probably not. Not on a long-term scale anyway. It's possible, but I don't think on a long term. I think there was already, blackouts like in California due to that partially. So will blackouts be more common? I think blackouts are going to be more common. Yeah, not necessarily because of electric automobiles. What will the cost be to upgrade the infrastructure to suit these new demands? I have no idea. They're going to probably rely on a lot of private enterprise to do that. So a lot of private enterprise they're going to encourage, I think, through, certain tax breaks and certain incentives, that businesses like, particularly gas stations and particularly, I would say maybe even like hotels and, anything related in the travel industry, I think they're going to be encouraged through incentives to upgrade their own infrastructure, right? So it's like, well, you don't have to, but if you don't, you're going to miss out on all these tax breaks, and that's going to be a huge deficit for you, right? That's going to put you behind the 8 ball to be competitive, right? So that's what I think is going to happen. I think that, there is going to be some cost to the government. I don't know what that would be, but I think it's going to be more of a quiet demand placed on the travel industry and the fuel industry. The prices of the new batteries cost in the region of $4,000 to $20,000. How can low-income families afford to run an electric car? Short answer is they can't. Long answer would probably be through government subsidies. Certain families will probably be allotted that. Because what are they doing now? You can go certain places and you can get a phone. You can get a smartphone for, the government will pay for as long as you meet certain income criteria. Low-income families are not going to be able to afford it, but the government will probably help them out, maybe give them incentives to take public transportation, and the middle and upper class will be able to they will probably be able to. Well, the upper class would be able to afford it. The middle class, will have a little bit of trouble, but the prices will, eventually come down somewhat as they are more mass produced. And yeah, so I think that's what's going to happen. They're going to be more and more encouraged, and as they're more and more encouraged, the industry will have no choice but to lower those prices. And yeah. All right, and I'm gonna get to one more question, and then we'll jump into the news stories. With the growth of QAnon and fake news sites, when a politician is rumored to be gay, having an affair, has a liking for the underage girls, or had a biracial child, do you think these rumors, when not proven truly, affect the way most of the way people would vote, with them voting for or against? Okay. Well, I mean, if you're talking in perspective of like QAnon and fake news sites, I mean, there's always been these kind of fake news tabloidy type of, periodicals that are running around. For instance, like we've had, for the longest time, I mean, one of the ones that I constantly saw in, grocery stores was like Weekly World News. And like, I'm not kidding you, when I was a kid, that had me terrified, because every week it would be like, oh my gosh, this meteor is heading right for the United States, or, I'm sorry, the Earth, and it's gonna kill everybody, and, it's just, start, building your bunkers now. And it would just have like, Bigfoot scene, and I still to this day don't know if that was a, if that was supposed to be a parody, or if it was like, somebody actually was writing that as news. But anyway, what I would say is, you've got all kinds of, we've always had these types of tabloids. And what QAnon is it's just it's almost like a conspiracy within a conspiracy kind of a thing, because it seems very odd that, people with intelligence would believe that there's this like guy named Q that's just running everything and, trying to, help Trump and, is acting behind the scenes and all that. Like, I don't know everything about QAnon. Obviously I don't really study that, but when you come to like what I have heard about it, what I've seen, that's just something that people are going to fall for, and there's a very select portion of the population. I mean, it's probably the same people that think that you're gonna be able to sell, gems on a MLM and get tons of money, right? Like it's probably that same portion of people that are following and falling for that type of news. So what I would say is, that's always going to exist. And do you think these rumors, when not proven, truly affect the way most of the way people would vote, with them voting for or against? Well, depends on the rumors, right? It depends on the specific rumors. So, when not proven, truly affect the way most of the people. Anything that's unsubstantiated and has some kind of attraction will always affect it, right? It will always affect people voting. So, for instance, like, there are people that, and I don't look too much into the Dominion thing, but there's a lot of people that will probably always feel that Dominion voting systems, for instance, are just going to be, they're not going to work. They're never going to work. They're horrible. You're gonna try to vote for someone, and someone else is gonna come up and populate, like, and so they might look at a Dominion voting system, for instance, and just not vote because they're like, well, my vote could count for the other side, or my vote could not be counted, or my vote, So I guess it depends on the specific rumor. I mean, for instance, if you've got an identitarian and, they're not really loving, like the Democrat, for instance, like let's say that someone's gay and they're not like, really, it's kind of a standard Democrat, but you've got, Republican running against him, but Republican might be gay. Well, that could turn that person. I mean, I don't know, not to say that all gay people vote Democrat, but they, very high likelihood that they will, but they might be turned by that, but that sounds like more of a gimmick. And again, it speaks to a low information voter. That is not something that you should be voting on, in my opinion. But you might vote for that because, hey, that's all you know about a candidate. And if that's the case and you're voting, you happen to know, what was it? I think when I lived in Gainesville, for instance, I knew one of the people voting for a commissioner, or one of the people running for the commissioner, one of them was gay and the other one wasn't, but they were both Democrats. And like the one that was gay was like on dating sites saying, vote for this person, vote for his name. I don't remember his last name. I think his first name was Casey. Vote for Casey in the, in the city commission or county commissioner district number 3, and it was, why would I vote for you over your opponent? I don't know. I don't even think I voted in that. I wasn't even in that district, so I can't even say that. But, the whole thing is you might, people will vote just because they see a name, just because they remember that. And they're like, oh, I saw that person, right? And so they'll just vote on that, which is horrible. That's like that's a horrible way to vote. But again, that's a weakness of democracy that we're going to have. Yeah. So, with them voting for or against, I mean, probably against based on what you're saying. But I mean, I think it's going to be a very small percentage of people that do that. At least I hope it's a small percentage of people that do that. So, all right, that's all the questions we're going to do today. We're going to get to the actual news stories that I have, and let's talk about them. FedEx is not first. We're going to go to the other news stories here. Okay. Let's talk about China first. Get out of here, ads. Let me make sure it did change. Okay, it changed. Okay. So let's read this article. China imposes export controls on 2 metals used in semiconductors and solar panels. The Chinese government has announced buyers of 2 metals used in computer chips and solar panels will need to apply for export permits starting on August 1st. The metals gallium and germanium are also used in military applications. The U.S. has been imposing trade limits for several years to try to restrict China's access to semiconductor technology. In a statement, China's Commerce Ministry said that the new controls on exporting the metals are to safeguard China's national interests. These controls aren't a ban, notes NPR's Emily Feng reporting from Taipei, but it's possible China could reduce the amount it sells as retribution. That's a scenario the U.S. and allied countries have long been worried about, not just for those 2 fairly obscure metals, but for the many minerals produced and processed in China in large quantities. China produces 60% of the world's germanium and 80% of the world's gallium. According to the Critical Raw Minerals Alliance, it also dominates supply chains for rare earth minerals used in many high-tech products, as well as lithium, cobalt, and graphite used in batteries. Beijing's move comes shortly before U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is set to visit China. The relationship between the U.S. and China is fraught, to say the least. Trade, particularly as it comes to semiconductors and raw materials, has been a particular point of tension. Both the White House and an overwhelming majority of Congress see China's dominance of mineral supply chains as an economic competition and security threat. The U.S., citing national security, has imposed its own export limits on semiconductor manufacturing equipment. The Netherlands, used under pressure from the U.S., recently did the same. Okay, so talking about this story a little bit, what we've got is we've got a kind of a trade war here with China. Now, if you remember the last trade war, or a trade war before, it was with Japan, and that was shortly before Japan attacked, Pearl Harbor, because there was like a embargo that was placed, and so Japan wasn't able to get the minerals it needed and the supplies it needed when it was invading, China. And so, that's kind of what happened is a retribution. So my kind of opinion of this is I don't think that Biden is, this is not even about Biden, really. The reason I'm mentioning him is because I think that there needs to be a figurehead that is able to really, show strength, for instance. And Biden is just not that figurehead, right? Biden is definitely, an older, feeble man that has lots of problems. He has a very low approval rate. Even though I do think he'll win re-election at this point, he has a low approval rate. He has a low, for instance, what I would say cognizant. He has all kinds of gaffes, says all kinds of strange things, and so I think the problem with this is the fact that there are just too many people that are going to kind of, just stand up to Biden. I mean, we kind of see Putin doing this. I don't think, and again, not a fan of Trump. I just don't think that Putin would have invaded Ukraine if Trump were in office. I think that, there's a display of strength that Trump had that Biden doesn't portray or possess. And so, as a figurehead, this seems to be an introduction to what China might start doing. So now they're trying to get, in order to buy this, you have to have permits, and they're probably going to be able to, impose, well, not be able to, but they probably will impose, different limits on the amount, because they're going to want to keep that for themselves and use it as a bargaining chip, right? So, again, don't think it's a great, I do think it kind of goes back to the executive branch a little bit, because you need a strong figurehead, and I just don't think Biden is the figurehead that can stand up to this. So I don't have a lot to say about that, but I did want to mention it because I did see it in my looking for different stories, and yeah, I thought it was kind of interesting and noteworthy to talk about it a little bit. This one's kind of a quick story as well. The next two stories I think we'll talk about a little bit more in detail. But 110 million on alert for severe dangerous weather over holiday weekend. Okay. So between the damaging storm threat from the Midwest to the east and dangerous heat in the west and south, more than 110 million Americans are on alert for dangerous weather over the holiday weekend. On Saturday, excessively hot temperatures extending from the west coast to the south could affect 66 million Americans. Temperatures in the west will reach the hundreds. Excuse me one second. Okay. And even the 110s in places like Redding, California, and Fresno, California, along with Phoenix, Arizona. A whopping 116 degrees is expected in Palm Springs. In the south, heat index temperatures, how temperatures feel, will range from 105 to 115 degrees on Saturday in at least 8 southern states from Texas to Georgia. The entire state of Mississippi is under an excessive heat warning. On Saturday, the highest risk areas centered over St. Louis, Louisville, and Indianapolis, stretching across portions of I-70, I-55, I-65, and 64. More than 50 million Americans are in the storm zone this holiday weekend from Missouri to the East Coast. Americans will need to stay alert for storms with damaging winds, along with chances for large hail and a few tornadoes. On Sunday, the threat of damaging wind and large hail will extend from Tennessee to New Jersey. Temperatures are expected to remain hot through the July 4th holiday. 15 states remain under air quality alerts on Saturday. Overall, the smoke in America is weakening, but those with asthma and other respiratory issues should continue to use caution, health officials warn. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty hot. I think that, actually I was driving to Jacksonville. I got to drive again tonight there. I was driving to Jacksonville, and it was pretty warm. I actually have to get this fixed, but I have a issue right now in the Miata where the air conditioning is not working when the car is stopped. Well, it's working, but it's like pretty weak, and then like when the car is moving again, depending on how fast it's moving, will determine how strong the air conditioner is. So most of the way to Jacksonville was fine, but it was hot. In those few areas where you're stopped and in the city. And so, yeah, it's pretty hot. I guess they're just trying to say, stay inside or don't. I take caution. I don't know if anybody has anything to say about that. It was a story that was given to me, so I have covered it. All right. Let's move on to a fun topic. Kamala Harris. VP Kamala Harris says the Supreme Court took rights from the people of America. Oh dear. On stage this weekend, there was Lauryn Hill, Missy Elliott, Megan Thee Stallion, and there was Kamala Harris. Dude, just imagine all four of those people. All four of those people. Like, clearly, they are the epitome of intelligence. Like, I can't think of four people that are more intelligent than those four. Okay? Coretta Scott King famously said that the fight for civil rights must be fought and won with each generation. We are that generation she spoke of, said the vice president on stage Friday at the 29th Essence Festival of Culture. So fight we must. Each generation, we are the generation she spoke of. I don't know. That sounds like maybe she's speaking, when you say each generation, that doesn't mean one generation. That generally means more than one. But, okay. Maybe she was confused. Let's give her the benefit of the doubt here. Maybe she thought there was only one. Tens of thousands of people showed up this past weekend for the Essence Festival in New Orleans, Louisiana, where Vice President Kamala Harris headlined panel conversations about economic opportunity and maternal health and reproductive rights. On both days she spoke, the U.S. Supreme Court issued monumental decisions that ended the use of race as a factor in college admissions and blocked the Biden administration's attempt to forgive student loan debt. It also ruled that businesses could refuse... okay, let's do it. Okay, we got LGBTQ. We all know that. Okay, then we have caps lock tab, ampersand, tilde, at sign, dollar sign, percent sign, 7, U, J, period, question mark, alt, control, delete, of course. Who can forget that? Page up, home, arrow, left arrow, right arrow, down arrow, increase the brightness, Windows key, backslash, forward slash, greater than sign, less than sign. I think I got them all. Okay. Customers. This is a serious moment and fundamental issues are at stake, Vice President Harris told NPR's Michelle Martin in her first interview after the court decisions at the Essence Festival. And I do believe that there is a national movement afoot to attack hard-won and hard-fought freedoms. Okay. The annual music festival engages Black and African American women, focusing on culture, empowerment, and societal issues. This year, many of the conversations were dominated by the decisions the Supreme Court had made in the hours before. I have 3 degrees. I come from a home where I did not have $500,000. Just gonna... I don't know. There's not many people that did. I'm just saying. I don't... Okay. Maybe she has some more insight for us. I did not have parents paying for my education. To Maya Colvin of Houston, Texas. To NPR. Okay, she said this to NPR at the festival. Colvin said she graduated with a doctorate in educational leadership, a hefty investment. We took out these loans, right, with the idea that having a college degree would give us a better life. Now she worries about what comes next. What comes next? Okay, so you went to college, you got a doctorate. You got a doctorate in educational leadership. You probably paid, I don't know, at least $200,000 for that, probably more, but we'll be conservative at $200,000. Okay? You graduated with a doctorate in educational leadership. We took out these loans, right, with the idea that having a college degree would give us a better life. How does it give you a better life? Like, what? Just tell me. Like, I know the answer, but I don't think she knows the answer. So I don't know if she just thought that you go to college and then you just die, right? Like, maybe that's what she thought. And then she's like, oh, wait, I'm still alive. And I'm like 30 years old. Oh, crap. I've got like 70 years left. If you're lucky. Or unlucky, depending on how you look at it. Oh, crap. Now what do I do? Here's a thought. Here's an idea. Go out and find a job with your degree. Or go and create your own business with your degree. I don't know. I don't know if that's crazy. I don't know if that's, the tequila talking, which I didn't have any tequila today, but I'm just trying to get a I mean, and the other thing is like, I just wonder how, like, student loan debt, right? Like this program, I think it only forgave like 10 or 20,000, but I could be wrong. Like, how you have a doctorate, and if you are dedicated to school enough where you're going to go and get a doctorate, okay, I would think you have a career path for a doctorate, a very strong indication of what you want to do. Because that's not just a 4-year degree, where a lot of people get a 4-year degree to have one, but then end up going into something else because they, either, they don't like the field they went into, but they were almost done, or you just need a degree for certain, like companies to hire you. There's lots of reasons that you might want to go get like a 4-year degree, but very few, very, very few places will say to you that you need to get a doctorate unless you need that doctorate for some reason. Right? So, why is she worried about what comes next? She's not. Is the simple answer. It's propaganda. This is propaganda that, they just want you to hang on one second. Why does my cursor do this sometimes? Okay. This is just propaganda that they want you to feel bad for her. That's all it is. They want you to feel bad for this doctor that's probably going to make, at least 4 times what you do. But, feel bad for her because she decided to go to school. She decided to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in her own education, and now she's sad because she won't get some of that money knocked off. Okay. Sure. I have a very, I have my sad violin music, the same sad violin music that I play for when people mention single mothers, and say, how sad, very, very sad, we need to feel really bad for them. And, I have the same violin music playing for this doctor that I do for them. Festival attendees like Jamie Jackson of Brooklyn, New York, wanted to know what the Biden-Harris administration is doing to protect marginalized groups. We've had a lot of attacks, she said in anticipation of hearing Vice President Harris speak. First of all, this is one of the worst Pride months on record as far as attacks against the, I already said it, I'm not going to say it again, community. So I'm really interested to see what her thoughts are and how we can continue to cultivate and also support marginalized voices. Okay. I mean, I don't know what attacks she's talking about. Can she be more specific? Are you talking about the Bud Light types of boycotts, or are you talking about how Target and Starbucks and some stores didn't want to display rainbows everywhere? What attacks? I just need to know so that way I can comment on them. But NPR likes to keep things vague, so. I like her because I feel like she's getting out there, said Dwayne and Camille Hodges, who host a show in Davenport, Iowa called Wake Up and Praise. She's not sitting behind a desk. She's getting out in the communities and, finding out what's going on and meeting people and talking to them, said Camille. Her spouse believes Harris is starting to address various thorny issues, which impresses him. She's not shying away and not talking about them, said Dwayne Hodges. Oh, okay. So she's just going with the same, the same talking points that pretty much every big tech company will ban you if you don't go along with. And I guess that's brave somehow. So again, my cursor is gone. So this is how we're going to do it. Oops. Vanessa Rice is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, historically black sorority. Like the vice president. What an odd sentence. Vanessa Rice is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha, a historically black sorority like the vice president. Maybe Kamala was part of that sorority? Is that what this article is trying to say? Or is she saying that, or is it saying historically black sorority and Kamala Harris is also black? That's just such a weird sentence. Either one of those is neutral. It's just, why would you phrase it that way? Anyway, Rice describes herself as an independent voter, but said she leans conservative, While she supports the vice president, Rice said the Biden-Harris administration hasn't done enough for a population that put the two of them into office. It just seems like other groups' matters get handled faster than ours, she said. Okay. I don't know what that means. That quote seems to be taken out of context, in my opinion. If they're saying she leans conservative, like, that quote is very strange. So we'll just keep it at that. Last year at this time, the opposition overturned Roe v. Wade. Since then, Harris has taken on the task of addressing reproductive rights and maternal health care from her side of the political spectrum. She has traveled the country. Harris said she's heard countless stories. The stories are women having miscarriages in toilets. Okay. I just want to know, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna not say that. I mean, yes, they're probably handpicked to go talk to Kamala Harris. So, yes, they're probably handpicked by the DNC themselves to go and tell Kamala this story. You know, because you have to find these people that will tell you about the miscarriage they had in the toilet. The stories are women who are in the process of a miscarriage who are being denied care in an emergency room and going back to the emergency room and being denied again. So, you know, that one I might believe a little bit. NPR's Michelle Martin sat down with Vice President Kamala Harris in New Orleans after her appearance at Essence Fest to talk about her work, her thoughts on the High Court's ruling, and the 2024 election. This is an edited and condensed version of the interview. Of course it is. Given that the range of action possible for the administration is fairly narrow in this area, one could make the argument that the administration has done what it can do through executive action, and that also speaks to the question of the student loan debt issue. As we are speaking today, the president has spoken about this back in Washington, and he's laid out what steps the administration is prepared to take. But the range of things that you can do is fairly narrow. Given all that, what's your message? I'm sorry. Well, the message is, it's not a slogan. Hang on. I have to fight with my cursor right now, so give me one moment here. The message is, first, on an issue like student loan debt, to first speak to the issue itself and the importance of understanding the issue, which is so many of our young people in particular are experiencing debt that is out of proportion, that is weighing them down to the extent that they are wondering if they can ever have a family, if they can ever buy a home. We are looking at a policy that we believe in, that if implemented, if the court hadn't acted as it did, would have meant that 90% of the recipients of student loan debt relief make under $75,000 a year and are barely able to make it through the month with the other bills that they have. And so we are going to be creative in the way that we can to provide some relief to this population that we have front of mind on this issue. On the issue of reproductive care and access to reproductive care, though not only the Department of Justice, or through not only the Department of Justice where litigation is happening, where it is appropriate, through Health and Human Services, what we are doing to make clear that no one should be denied access to emergency care. There's a law in that regard, and doing what we need to do to enforce that law, doing what we can and need to do to inform people of their privacy rights on an issue like abortion. So there is work that we can do. But ultimately, for a lot of these issues, look, we have three branches of government. The court took rights from the people of America. Congress can put those rights back in place. We cannot through executive action. Congress can. So part of the point, including when I was talking on the stage here in New Orleans, is reminding people of the power of their vote to elect people into the United States Congress who care about the importance of putting back in place in law the protections of Roe versus Wade. Okay. Oh boy. Like, I had trouble getting through that word set. Like, I can't do a word salad even reading it. But she can. So let's talk about this a little bit. It's not a slogan. The message is, first, on an issue like student loan debt, to first speak to the issue itself and the importance of understanding the issue, which is so many of our young people in particular are experiencing debt that is out of proportion, that is weighing them down to the extent that they are wondering if they can ever have a family, if they can ever buy a home. Okay, so first of all, why have you pushed these young people that don't have the money and don't have the funds and don't have the availability to go into college? If they're not prepared for that, then what maybe what they can do is, take off a few years after high school, save up, and see if they, there's a very hot job market, which is something that Janet Yellen and everybody keeps telling us, right? So if that's the case, then why can't these young people who are out of high school learn what a job is, learn certain, disciplines of a job, how to, how to manage people, how to do certain aspects, get experience, and then go to college? Well, the short answer to that is that there's no reason that they can't do that. The reason that we have a student loan debt crisis, as they call it, is because what we are not doing is we are not encouraging people to, out of high school to maybe save up and not go into debt. What we are saying to them is you need to go directly into college, not trade school, not anything that would be, not even community college a lot, even though, you can get, a lot of stuff done there, like half the price or a third of the price. You have to go right to a top university, and you have to, go through that university, and you have to get everything done. And, generally the more it costs, the more prestigious it is. That's what you need to aspire to. Even though a lot of these kids are not ready to do that. They're not ready to go to college. They're not ready to, get in there and, financially, they rely on their parent support, or they rely on, debt, which often will give them more than they need. And when you give young people that are 18, 19, 20 years old a bunch of money, and they're not seeing, I have to pay this $7,000 back, well, what happens? They go to Cancun. They literally do things with this money a lot of times that, comes to them from student debt. From the loans that they take, which make student debt, is what I should be saying. So, yeah, we shouldn't be encouraging people. That's how we, first of all, start to avert the crisis of that. If you encourage people in high school, instead of you have to go right out to college and work, if you can't afford it, you have to go right out to college and, get through college, and then you can work. We should say, hey, if you can't afford it, it's going to help you a lot to be able to save up and then go to college, because you'll pay a lot less interest on the other side, right? And you might be able to pay for a lot of it yourself. But we don't tell people that. We get them into these, and student loans, again, they're going to get their money. This is not a credit card, okay? Credit card, you can, somewhat, sometimes you can declare bankruptcy on it, or you can just default on it and they won't crack. Student loans, they're going to get their money. If you die, they're going to get their money. Right? And, a lot of these loans are designed in such a way where you can't just pay them off. Like, okay, you get a windfall of money. You can't just, pay them off early and avoid all the interest. You're still going to pay that interest. So, maybe work on restructuring student loans so that they're not predatory like that. Maybe work on, schools to make them more, again, I don't even agree with public schools, but maybe work on the counseling of those schools to say, hey, there's trade schools that are going to be cheaper, and you can get into work earlier. You can do certain programs that, will, increase the amount of money and decrease the amount of money you're going to spend later, but increase the amount of money available to you to go into college. We also have financial, responsibility classes that you can take that would make it so that the final cost of your college, and you can calculate that at any time depending on what you want, but they don't present it like that. They present it as you need to go to college right away. you need to go to a university right away. You need to pay for it. And the way you pay for it is through student loans. And to forgive them on the other side really just means we put something in our balance sheet, we write it off, or we take what's in our balance sheet, we write that off, and guess what happens? Inflation goes up again. So you end up paying for it anyway. But not only that, but a bunch of people that had nothing to do with it end up paying for it. And if they graduate and, 90% of the student loan, they make under 75 grand and they're barely able to make it through the month with the other. Well, that's your problem. That is the problem that you created through giving people that had no way of paying you back. They promised to pay you back, but they didn't have any method of doing so. You promised them money. You gave them, I'm sorry, you didn't promise them money, you gave them money. But it's not their fault. I could talk about student loans all day because it's such an easily avoidable thing, but As far as the reproductive care, y'all know where I stand on that. I'm pro-choice. Have never been, staunchly pro-life person. I understand the position, but I don't believe it's something that's sustainable. And I think that people should be, should be able to get it. As far as, what did I see in here? I don't know what she's going through, like privacy, emergency care, all these other things, which again, they're going to talk about, all the time. Well, no, it just, somebody should be able to get an abortion if they want to. It should be a tragedy. It should be limited, not through, the government passing a law or, revoking a law, but through, societal pushback on it, right? That's what I've believed, and that's what I still believe. The rest of this is just kind of, just kind of rhetoric that she's talking about. She is, of course, NPR is always gonna, edit the interview to make Kamala Harris look good because, that's how they are, but it's just kind of fluff, the rest of it. Okay, let's see here. News directors at Michigan TV station ousted after telling staff to get both sides of Pride coverage. 2 news directors at a Michigan NBC affiliate were ousted on Thursday following the circulation of an internal memo calling for scaled-back coverage of Pride Month events and directing the station's journalists to get both sides on that issues, a source of knowledge of the situation told CNN. The email sent earlier this month by Stanton Tang, news director of Grand Rapids-based Wood TV, and Amy Fox, the station's assistant news director, said the polarizing nature of Pride events had upset some of its conservative viewers, CNN previously reported. We need to recognize that some stories related to that issues are going to be controversial and polarizing in our community, the memo sent by Fox said. While you personally may not agree with a certain position, people who are entitled to their position or opinions, and they are our viewers. If we are covering Pride events, we need to consider how to make the story balanced and get both sides of the issue, she added. The memo sparked fierce backlash from the newsroom staff, prompting the station's owner, Texas-based Nexstar, to launch an investigation into the matter. In a statement to CNN earlier this month, Nexstar said the email was not consistent with Nexstar's values, the way we cover the news, or the respect we have for our viewers, and apologized for offending members of that community and Wood TV's viewers. On Thursday, Gary Whiteman, a Nexstar spokesperson, confirmed to CNN that the company had made changes to Wood TV's newsroom leadership team to ensure its ability to continue to provide outstanding local news coverage and service to the Grand Rapids community and surrounding area. As these are internal personnel decisions involving matters of personal privacy, we will decline further comment. Two of the station's executive producers, Luke Steyer and Madeline Odell, who had, among others, publicly voiced their concern over the directive, were fired, the pair announced on Friday on Twitter. We've had a front row seat to... Okay. So, I'm just going to tell you guys, you know, depending on what you work for, or, you know, who you work for or whatnot, you know, you may not want to hear this, but they are eventually going to come for your job. Now, I work for a fairly conservative company, and so, you know, I think that, like, if people saw that I was on here and saying the things that I say, I think my boss would be like, yeah, I don't care, and tell them to F off. But, you know, the thing about a lot of people, like, especially if you work for a big company, especially if you work for big tech, especially if you work for, you know, in certain industries like the counseling industry or, you know, social work or, you know, certain government positions, even under the directive of, like, Republicans and whatnot. Like, I need to let you all know, like, I just need to get this out there, is that you're going to have problems if you continue to, you know, if you hold a quiet position and it eventually comes out, like, you know, they're going to come for your job. And as you can see, they're being successful, right? They're being successful, you know, and this is a news affiliate, which, you know, is going to be, you know, big and, you know, hard to, or, you know, which is always going to be on that side anyway, I should say. But, you know, the thing is you have to start building, if you haven't already, or investing in a parallel economy where companies are not, you know, where neutrality and, you know, different opinions are going to be valued, right? I mean, this news station went out of their way to say, we don't want to offend anybody. We have to cover both sides. Blah, 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 blah. Like, it wasn't even, I mean, like, you know, we don't need to cover both sides, basically, is what the, you know, we're just going to report, you know, pro, you know, rainbow. We don't need to cover both sides. Like, we don't care about that other side. You know, this is a news affiliate telling you this, and the news is supposed to be, you know, fair and balanced, and they're just coming out and just saying, like, we don't care. And so, you know, I'm just letting you guys know, like, you know, they're totally okay with, you know, in Toronto, how, you know, Bud Light sponsored a, you know, Pride event, which had, you know, naked men and women just bicycling in front of kids. They don't care. I mean, they were wearing shoes, so we'll give them that. But, you know, as somebody I listen to a lot, Eric July has said, like, if you are not jiggling and gyrating with these people out in the streets at a pride parade, you aren't on their side. Like, they're going to, you know, hate you. And they're going to make it very well known that they hate you. Okay? And they're going to do everything they can to destroy you. You know, I use this example, and I've used it before, but J.K. Rowling, I mean, I don't remember it, or I don't know if you guys remember, is what I should say, back in, you know, like 2018, 2017, where, you know, Trump was, you know, all over Twitter and, you know, just, you know, posting, and, like, she would just, like, dunk on him every day, and she was a huge, like, darling of the left, and people just, you know, constantly followed her and loved her. And, like, the minute that she came out against the trans stuff, right, and said, hey, I believe in women's rights, and I believe in, you know, women actually being women, you know, not men being women, they came after her, and they have not stopped ever since, right? And, like, you know, they called for boycotts on, what, the Harry Potter game that came out? Was it earlier this year or last year? They called for, you know, I mean, you know, to have her outlawed, like, in a certain way, you know, to have what she says on Twitter to be banned. I mean, these people will come for you. And so you need to be very cognizant of, you know, where you work, and you need to have a backup plan. Let me say that. You need to have a backup plan because, you know, if you happen to agree with me on this position and you think that they're not going to come after your work, they will. You know, even though you might say, well, you know, I'm small enough and, you know, I only talk on Twitter or I only talk on Twitch or, you know, whatever. Like, no, they're going to come for you. There are sites dedicated to finding out who you are, you know, no matter how obscure or, you know, whatever you might be. They will. They'll complain. They'll say you're spreading hate. They'll say you're spreading lies. They'll say, you know, whatever they can say. And you're just, you know, I don't know, depending on your company, you might get disciplined. So, you know, I'm just warning you guys, have a backup plan. Constantly, you know. Also, here's what I'll say for anybody in a hiring position, like, I can't overtly say this. You know, I can't overtly say, like, don't hire these people because, like, you know, that's, you know, not, like, you can't discriminate against, you know, obviously, you know, certain things when making a hiring decision. So I would not say don't, you know, I would never say to engage in that type of practice. You know, but here's what I'll say. Hair color is not one of them. Hair color is not a protective class, right? So, you know, maybe if someone comes in with pink hair, they're telling you something about themselves, right? They're telling you something about themselves. You know, somebody comes in with, well, you know, that's all I'm going to say because that gets tricky. And if they infiltrate your organization, just like it fascinates me what happened with Starbucks, because Starbucks was like, yeah, we're not hiding any Pride event stuff. And they all went on strike. And I remember I actually drove by Starbucks. It's a Starbucks in St. Pete. And in order to get to the bank, I have to drive through their parking lot. And I remember just seeing nobody at Starbucks. It's the first time I've never seen, that Starbucks constantly has people in the drive-thru, just like, I've never seen nobody there, and it was just closed. And because of the strike, I'm assuming. I mean, maybe for other reasons, but I think it was because of the strike. So, you know, if somebody, let me put it this way, if somebody gives you information about themselves, you should always use that information, right? I use it when I play poker, for instance. You know, I use it when I play poker. And I use it because, you know, if somebody tells me, for instance, like, that they've got, you know, lots of money, that's kind of a common thing for people to say at a poker table, like that, you know, they've got, you know, more money than God and they don't care. And I don't know why, because I don't often believe them. But, like, if somebody gives me that information and I do believe them for whatever reason, that information can then be used against them, right? Because I know that they're not going to be particularly concerned with, you know, the bets that they're making. And so I know to give less, you know, put less weight into their bets, right? And so I would say the same thing, to you. If somebody gives you information, use their information. Use the information they give you. All right. And finally, last story. We'll probably get out of here early because I do have to get to Jacksonville again. But FedEx accused of largest odometer rollback fraud in history with used vans. Once FedEx vans reach the end of their package delivery lives, they're resold and repurposed for various purposes. Many of them are turned into food trucks, as their size and boxy shape are perfect for mobile kitchens. However, FedEx is facing a lawsuit for selling such vans, as it's being accused of the largest odometer rollback fraud in history. Oops. The lawsuit accuses FedEx of replacing the odometers in many of its vans with ones that read 0 miles, using the vans for a bit longer after that, and then selling them at auction with 100,000 miles or less on the new odometers. With such low indicated mileage, business owners were buying the vans for top dollar, thinking that they were still pretty fresh. That they were still pretty fresh, I guess. However, their real mileage was sometimes as much as 4 times the odometer readout, thus leading to countless mechanical issues that would cost the customers far more money. In some cases, the issues would be so severe the vans were useless and businesses went bust. Yikes. Wow. According to KTNV Las Vegas, Tom Layton of Henderson, Nevada, who first noticed FedEx's odometer rollbacks in 2017. Layton, who's been buying and selling trucks and vans for 36 years, bought a FedEx Freightliner truck with around 180,000 indicated miles. When he sold the truck, his buyer hooked it up to a computer that told them the real mileage was around 400,000 miles. Layton filed his own lawsuit back then, which is separate from the class action lawsuit FedEx is currently facing. Since then, customers from California, Tennessee, New Jersey, Florida, and Virginia have all noticed odometer rollbacks on former FedEx vehicles. This is a funny thing. I've always preferred UPS over FedEx. FedEx, if you use them over, a long term, maybe this is just my experience. I can't say this I can't say this about every FedEx, and so, I'm not going to say, but, over a long term, the number of botched deliveries by FedEx, either you get something damaged or you get something slow, or, it just becomes untrackable, or whatever, never comes, that kind of thing. The number of botched deliveries, has just been, compared to UPS, I would get 2 a year, and FedEx would be 10 a year when I was working in, shipping, and they were big, right? UPS, you might get something a day or two late, or you might get something damaged, but the insurance would cover all, you'd get a generous insurance payment from UPS, whereas FedEx, you would get $27 for something that was worth $2,000, you get $27, and they'd be well, that's all you insured it for. Hey, what's up, Infamous? How you doing? Yeah, I mean, I've had nothing but problems. I shouldn't say nothing but problems, but a significant percentage of problems is what I would say, right? I don't know what it is about FedEx. It's just funny that they have this, this is alleged, of course. It's not to say they're doing it. I mean, they're obviously in the middle of a legal battle, but FedEx didn't always sell its retired vans. Once they had about 350,000 miles, they would usually scrap the vans. It wasn't until 2011 that FedEx started auctioning old vans off through its fleet company, Holman Fleet Leasing. The lawsuit alleges that both FedEx and Holman intentionally replaced the odometers to officially inflate the values of the vans, so they'd sell for higher prices at various auctions throughout the United States. Then, according to the accusations, both companies would split the profits. FedEx, with the knowledge and assistance of Holman, replaced thousands of odometers on FedEx Holman vehicles, the lawsuit states. Though odometers as automotive components do occasionally wear out or malfunction and need to be replaced, there is no valid reason for this large-scale replacement of the odometers on FedEx Holman vehicles other than to perpetuate their agreement to commit odometer fraud. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So artificial inflation of the odometers, that's going to be really interesting to see how that lawsuit plays out. Every person who delivers for FedEx has to take their own vans and take care of all maintenance. Has to own their own vans and take care of all. Basically, they're all contracted. Really? I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I've just always found FedEx just to be unreliable versus like UPS. Like UPS, I remember the worker was there every day, on time. Like, I really don't remember any problems with UPS, you know, on a large scale. And FedEx was like always. I just remember this one package, like it just. Like, I remember I had to ask about it because it was in California. And, like, I don't know, it was coming from California or whatever. And it just sat in California for, like, 3 days. Just sat there. And I call and they're like, oh, it's still in California. And I'm like, I know, but it's been there. Like, there hasn't had any movement on it. And, like, there was, like, no urgency on the part of them. Like, they were just like, oh, you know, sometimes it's at a facility and blah, blah. It's like, okay, but I ordered it and, you know, it was like, it's supposed to be here by Friday. It's not going to be here now. And the reason I remember that was because I was expecting it on Friday because I was leaving on Saturday. And I didn't want it to sit outside the entire time. You know, because they were going to deliver it to my door. And it was, you know, if I wasn't there to receive it. And so I think I ended up having to have the people, like the apartment complex, I said, okay, this is, you know, I just said, can you please just move it inside, you know, and they did, but, you know, just put it inside the door, it's fine. So, yeah, for that, yeah, you probably didn't even make any money. Because that's a lot of maintenance, and they have special things that they need. Well, nobody's on time anymore, you know. But I think I'm going to end early. I gotta head up to Jacksonville. So you guys, thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it. It was quiet today. Not a huge stream, but you know, it's not my normal day or time. So I appreciate everyone who did show up. Thank you so much. I will. I should be back on Sunday, and, you know, normal time with some stories. I want to get some additional streams in. I don't know if I don't know if gaming's what I want to do there, but, I want to get some additional streams in just to start to get, you know, some more content out, because I do, again, want to grow and eventually, you know, hopefully get some, you know, some new stuff going and some, you know, more interesting content. So if you have any ideas for that, feel free to submit them to the suggestion box, which is in the Discord. You can also send it to, you know, you can also just DM me there or DM me on Twitch. I don't know if YouTube has a system like that. I don't think they do, but either way, you guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you all being here. And I will see you guys this